Hello and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host and City Manager Doug Bartosh. I'm sure a lot of you recognize that we're in the middle of election season, and it's been very interesting from the national level all the way down to the local level. And that's why we're here today in regards to some of the information that's being put out by people related to their elections. And some of it is misinformation, and we want to make sure that our residents have correct information. Recently, there was an article in one of the local newspapers about data for the city wants solid water data, which is a little bit of a misleading headline. What this story was really about is the planned injection wells we have going. And there were some really some far off claims in this article that have caused several people to call City Hall and ask, hey, what's going on? So I thought it would be valuable to have our Natural Resources Director come in and talk to everybody. That's Tom Whitmer, and he's handling our injection well projects and is very, very involved in water resources here in the city, and has been involved in water resources around the state for many, many years, and has a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise on the issue. So with that, let's start off by asking Tom, injection wells. Why do we want to do them?
That's a good question. And here we are in the Verde Valley, and we're growing in population, not exceedingly fast, but we are growing like everybody else does. And we've got a river at our backdrop. And those two things make it very important from the city standpoint that we meet the needs of our customers while ensuring that we also maintain the integrity of that river. That's kind of the overarching goal that the city has. And as a result of that, we start looking at long-term out what our projected demands are going to be into the future, and start looking around and saying, okay, if we don't want to impact that river, we want to make sure that we do everything possible to minimize the amount of water that we pump and use all the available resources that are available to us. We don't have the luxury of having a Colorado River at our backdrop where we can bring a pipeline in to offset some of our pumping demands or prevent our pumping demands. So we need to take advantage of all resources that are available to us. And of course, the only renewable supply of water that we in the city have here in the Verde Valley that grows with population is our reclaimed water. And as a result of that, you start looking at that, and for years, we've been just discharging that into Del Monte Wash, and it really doesn't benefit the city's water portfolio, or for that matter, the regional aquifer to much degree. So we as a city have decided that the best approach to this is to try and put that reclaimed water back in the ground, put it back into the regional system, such that it offsets our pumping that is occurring and also maintains the groundwater elevation such that we're not going to impact the flows of the Verde River. And in the city, the reason we go with injection wells as opposed to basin recharge, just the hydrogeology doesn't warrant us using basin recharge where it percolates into the ground. So we literally have to drill a well and put the water back into the ground, in some cases under pressure. So that's why we've taken the approach of taking that water and putting it back in the ground.
And I'm not sure that we're the only ones that are taking this approach.
No, statewide, this is something that is being looked at very closely, and there are a number of cities that are already doing it. Sedona, to the north of us, even though they are not a water provider, they are trying to do similarly to what we're trying to do, is maintain the sustainability of the region from a water resource standpoint. So they've actually got one injection well that is already recharging, and another one that they're in the process of getting permitted and getting it hooked up as well. So we're not the only one that's doing this. And it's really important, from the city of Cottonwood standpoint, we actually collect in our sanitary wastewater system up to 70% of what we deliver to homes that are on the sanitary sewer system. So that's 70% of the water that we're pumping out of the ground that we're actually capturing back in our wastewater treatment plant that we can put back in the ground after it's treated to a standard that's actually better than or equal to or better than the groundwater itself. And I think that's a critical issue that needs to be noted as well is that the water we are putting back in the ground has gone through all the processes, treatment processes. It's at the highest standard of quality that DEQ has from a regulatory standpoint. That's an A+ standard. And if you look at the chemistry of that water in comparison to the chemistry of the groundwater, it's equal to or better than, because the one thing that DEQ requires is that if you're going to get permitted for this, and they're only going to allow that permit to be issued if you can ensure that you're not going to cause a deterioration in the quality of the groundwater itself.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the claims in the article was that we were going to pump effluent into the river and also into the aquifer.
Right.
And which kind of led me to believe that they really didn't know what they were talking about. I'm not sure they understood what effluent is. And so do you want to explain to people what effluent is and how serious that could be if you actually did that?
Yeah. Effluent generally is a term that's coined to raw sewage. And there's no way in the world, well, from a number of standpoints. One, first of all, you don't want to cause a deterioration in the quality of the groundwater. But secondly, from a physical standpoint, you can't physically put, untreated water back into the ground. It would plug the pores in the aquifer, which would prevent you from putting water down there for more than a few days, more than likely, just because it would plug it up. And so, from that standpoint alone, we can't do it. But from a regulatory standpoint and from just a practical standpoint, you want to take every precaution to ensure that you're not going to cause a deterioration in the quality of the groundwater, because that is our sole source of water for drinking here in the Verde Valley.
Well, and it seems like from a regulatory standpoint as well, I got to believe that there's some gigantic fines behind that and maybe even some jail time.
I don't know if anybody's gone to jail for it or been fined for it, but they won't even issue the permit. You have to prove to them that the quality of the water that you're going to be putting back in the ground meets their standards. And that is done, you have to report to, all wastewater treatment plants have to report their quality of their water anyways to the Department of Environmental Quality as it is. So therefore, we're very well aware of what's coming out of the discharge lines at the wastewater treatment plants. And believe me, if it didn't meet their standards, we wouldn't even be issued a permit to even begin doing it.
And it's interesting because that'll really be the beauty of the new reclamation plant at Riverfront Park. We'll actually have a kind of a training center there where people can go in and see how wastewater is actually processed and what it ends up being, which I think is really fascinating. You have that opportunity now to get a tour of our wastewater plant up on Mingus Avenue. And it's certainly not the most pleasant experience you'd ever want to have, but it's certainly educational, and it gives you a great understanding of how much treatment occurs with wastewater. So we're looking at really several different injection wells, and do you want to talk about the potential number and the locations and why those locations were selected?
We have one planned injection well down at the Riverfront Wastewater Treatment Plant. We've already drilled an exploratory test well where we went in and did all the feasibility analysis and the water chemistry analysis to determine whether or not it was even going to be feasible to inject water at that point in time. Based upon those analysis, we have determined that yes, it is, and we've already submitted all the paperwork necessary to the Department of Environmental Quality to obtain their aquifer protection permit from them so that we can begin injecting reclaimed, treated wastewater back into the aquifer once the plant is up and running and we've got everything approved by the Department of Environmental Quality. We already have one injection well that is drilled up at the Mingus Wastewater Treatment Plant. And that one, we went through a rigorous process again of doing, the pump tests, the injection tests, the water chemistry analysis, looking at whether or not there be any interactions between groundwater and reclaimed water when you inject it into the aquifer, because you can't, if you get any kind of reaction where you get a precipitation buildup or something like that, it'll plug the aquifer. It just would minimize your efficiency and ultimately prevent you from injecting up there. So we've done that already up there on one well. And then just like at the riverfront, we've submitted all the paperwork. That's going through the process again of getting an aquifer protection permit, which once we receive that, then we can go ahead and hook up the necessary plumbing and begin injecting at that well, because we already have the reclaimed water ready to go up there. It's just a matter of getting the permits for it now.
Which I assume was one of the reasons for that location, was because the reclaimed water's there and available to inject.
I mean, ideally, if you can put your injection wells in close proximity to the source, it minimizes your costs from a plumbing standpoint, from electrical standpoint, and everything else. And in this case, both of them are within, just literally, tens of feet of the actual source water, the reclaimed water there, which minimizes our ultimate cost for actually injecting back into the system. We also have 3 other ones that were part of the permit that we submitted to the Department of Environmental Quality up at the Mingus wastewater treatment plant. And we wanted to go ahead and get the permits on those now, such that when our volume gets up to a level that we can meet our reclaim needs, to offset the reuse right now, and the current injection well will have already permitted these other injection wells, which we can then go ahead and drill and begin doing the same thing there. Another nice thing about the Mingus wastewater treatment plant and the Riverfront wastewater treatment on the location is, at the Mingus one, it's up gradient of our primary pumping fields. So we get a recycling effect of this water. And so for every gallon of water we pump out of the ground, we can get about almost 3 additional gallons from that 1 gallon of water before it's ultimately gone, just through recycling. Down at the Riverfront wastewater treatment plant, that will be more of a benefit to the river itself than to actually any well fields. I mean, there will be some wells that will benefit from it, but predominantly that will be something that will most likely benefit the river.
Let's go ahead and take our first break, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of the other injection wells we're looking at.
Hey Gabby, how you doing? How's the play date and sleepover?
Dad, it was great.
Awesome. Okay, I'm on my way. Hey guys, what are you doing?
We're going swimming. We're going biking. Yeah!
I'll see you in a little bit, guys. I love you.
Hi, babe. How was school today?
Hi, Dad. It was great.
Okay, honey. I'll be home soon. Remember, you're never too far away from your kids to be a dad. Reach out and take a second to check in, because sometimes the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and I'm here today with Tom Whitmer, who's our natural resources director, and Tom spends most of his time working on water issues and ensuring the future of our water supply. And so we're talking about injection wells, and Tom was talking about the well that we currently have drilled up at the Mingus plant, awaiting permit to put that into operation from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Do you anticipate, Tom, that you're probably going to look at another well in that area in the future?
We're actually looking at the potential for 2 other wells up in that area, in addition to the one that's already drilled. Right now we capture a little over 1,000 acre-feet of water. We deliver right now about 2,500 acre-feet of water, which is about 1,000 acre-feet less than what we were pumping back in 2006. So we've already reduced our water usage, significantly, just through conservation, maintenance, and upkeep on the system and everything else that we have in play. And what we're doing now is, with that 1,000 acre-feet of water that we capture, we want to put that back in the ground, or at least whatever's available to us. Because in addition to actually putting water back in the ground, we already have a reuse program that's in existence here in the city of Cottonwood. And we've got plans to even expand that. Right now we're delivering water up to the demonstration vineyards up there at the Yavapai College. That was a hugely successful partnership project with the college itself to get that water up to them. Instead of having them pump groundwater out, we give them reclaimed water. There's a proposed, I think it's 25 acres of agriculture that's planned in the general vicinity of the airport up in that neck of the woods up there that we're going to put on reclaimed water as well. We've got 2 large turf facilities in the area here. By that, I mean like the Cottonwood Oak Creek Middle School and also the kids park off of 12th Street there that still have fairly expansive turfed areas that we want to maintain because they're aesthetically pleasing. They fit in with some of the venues that go on. But we don't want them pumping groundwater to irrigate those systems. So the plans are in play to actually get the reuse lines down there and eventually get them off the pumps so that they'll be not pumping groundwater any longer for those uses. We also, surprisingly enough, use water to wash all the CAS buses. So we've already got a fairly extensive reuse program that's in operation right now, and plans are to expand it as much as possible, but within reason. You start looking at the cost-benefit analysis of it, and then you make the determination whether it makes sense or not.
Right, which I know you look at very closely in terms of, is there really a benefit based on the cost? And you look at it based on the cost per acre foot.
Absolutely.
And it makes absolute sense. And we're really getting to the point now where, if all our plans work out, we almost begin to get concerned whether we're going to have enough reclaimed water to meet the demand. But that's probably a good thing.
Well, as I said before, we currently are capturing just a little over 1,000 acre-feet a year, and with the 2 injection wells that we have that we're getting permitted right now, we will be able to actually inject about 600 acre-feet of water a year, which is 60% of what we're capturing right now. So, our actual reuse right now is, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's we still have room to put in at least 1 more injection well. Even if we expand our reuse to do the 2 turfed areas, we probably have enough extra right now to possibly do 1 more injection well at this point in time. But rather than have to go through the permitting process, which can take 12 to 18 months, each and every time we put in a well, on this, the application that we submitted for the Mingus wastewater treatment plant, injection well, we included actually 3 total up there. So we'll already be permitted for it, and if and when we have the volume, we'll go ahead and drill them and start putting that back in the ground as well.
Now, one of the claims that was made in the article was that we had been denied a permit by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Is there any accuracy there?
I'm not quite sure where that came from. I have no idea where that came from because we have not been denied anything at this point in time. We've submitted the 2 permit applications. We've been going through the process. We've not been denied. In fact, we've received nothing but positive feedback at this point in time. They had some additional questions which we've addressed and resubmitted back to them. And the way it looks like now, it looks like we should get our permit here within the next probably 6 to 10 months at the most.
Now, the article focused a lot on the riverfront reclamation plan, which really is, it's not the exclusive reason that the plant was put down at that location, but certainly a large part of it was to create a lot of reclamation or reuse of reclaimed water.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only the ability to water all the green space around there, but again, you're looking at an injection well down there.
Right.
And again, why that location and where are you at in that process?
Interestingly enough, we're perhaps one of the only municipalities that's around that decided to build a wastewater treatment plant at the highest elevation in the city. Doesn't make a lot of sense from an energy standpoint because you're having to pump all that effluent uphill before you treat it.
Meaning the plant up on Mingus Avenue.
Yeah, and as a result, one of the things by building the plant down at Riverfront, you're at one of the lowest elevations in the valley, which makes the operational costs go down considerably from the standpoint from energy alone. That in and of itself makes sense, but you're also now in close proximity to one of the largest turfed areas in the valley as well, with the Little League fields, the ballparks, and the little park area there, and potentially a soccer field maybe at some time in the future or whatever else that may come along there, the dog park. All of those can be irrigated off of reclaimed water. which would be tremendously beneficial. So it's a kind of a win-win situation because we can use a fair amount of what we treat down there in the reclaimed water for irrigating all the turfed areas, but we also will be in close proximity to the river that we can put whatever else is in excess of that reuse component back into the ground, which benefits some of the downstream well users as well as the river.
So, and again, you've obviously done a lot of research on this. This is actually a test well that, and so kind of what are the steps you have to go through to get this approved? And
well, what we've gone through here, we did a very rigorous test. I mean, nobody had ever drilled a hole as deep as we've drilled in that close proximity to the river. We're almost 900 feet deep, within probably, 500 yards at most from the river, 400 yards from the river. And so really nobody knew what the hydrogeology of the system was. We weren't sure whether we could actually inject at that level without causing some problems. And so what we do is we drill a test well in this case, and then we run a pump test on it where we're pumping that well at a certain discharge rates for a period of time, and we calculate from a technical standpoint a lot of different components of what the hydrology in the aquifer, the characteristics of the aquifer are. And then based upon that, we can determine what would happen if we were to put water back into the ground, and how that would affect the area, where that mounding, if there were any mounding would occur, where it would occur, how big it would be, and so on. And these are all things that we have to submit to the Department of Environmental Quality. Then, of course, like I said, then we look at the chemistry of the waters, the water in the ground versus the water that we'd be putting back into the ground, and we look at the two of those, see how what the variations are. We actually do bench tests to determine what, if any, chemical reactions you might see if you start injecting that water back into the system. And then based upon all of this information, then we have to design the well from an engineering standpoint to make sure we can do it. And then that again is submitted to the Department of Environmental Quality along with that application. And that's what we've done up to this point in time. It's rather rigorous, and it's a good thing because you want to make sure you ensure the quality of and the characteristics of the integrity of the aquifer itself, or the regional aquifer system, because that's what all the wells are in here in the valley. So we want to make sure that we don't do anything to negatively impact that groundwater system.
let's go ahead and take our next break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit about the funding that these projects require and where that funding comes from. So come back and join us again on Inside Cottonwood.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait, Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and today we're talking about water injection wells. And I have with me here today Tom Whitmer, who's our Natural Resources Director. And we were talking about the injection well at Riverfront Park that will go in conjunction with the reclamation plant down there. And you know, one of the things, again, let's go back and, I mean, do you anticipate more than one well being installed down at that location?
At Riverfront, no. The well that we've got down there is designed to handle the entire capacity of that system if it's available.
Okay.
And like I said, you know, there will be a small portion of that will be used for irrigating all the turfed areas down there, the dog park, the Little League field, the ballparks, the park area, and so on. So anything over and above that, we envision putting back into the ground. And that should be somewhere between about 260 to 300 acre feet a year.
You know, and I think the other allegation was, you know, this well down at Riverfront Park cost us $581,000, and here the permit was denied, and you know, we wasted all that money. Let's talk about how much this did cost us, where the funding's coming from, and then the prudence of investing in this source.
Yeah. I'm not, again, I don't know where they got the 581 or 18,000, whichever it was, but nevertheless, thus far we have, to drill the exploratory well and do all the testing and put all of our information together for submittal to the DEQ, we've got about 80,000, well, slightly less than $80,000 invested into that well thus far, which is, you know, definitely not $500,000. And again, we've not been denied a permit on this thing. We're still working on the same hole that we drilled down there. It's not having to go back and drill another well, as the paper alluded to. The source of that funding is coming from the water supply development fund that the city has. It's part of a fee that's on every water bill that goes out every month, and that money is being used to develop, you know, new resources. And thus far, you know, we look at reclaimed water as being a new resource because simply we haven't put it to use up to this point in time, other than on a small scale for reuse, you know, things that are out there. By putting that water back in the ground, we're now making it available back to us, as well as to the regional aquifer itself and to the river, which is in and of itself, a new supply that has previously, thus far, not been available to us. So.
And how about the Mingus injection well up by the Mingus plant? What does that cost us to date, and where did that funding come from?
That is the actual injection well itself. Now, the exploratory test well that we've got down at Riverfront right now will ultimately be the point of compliance well. We'll actually move over because we didn't know what to do. We didn't want to spend a lot of money on initial test hole to find out we couldn't feasibly do it.
Right.
So, you know, we've minimized our costs up to this point in time. We now understand the characterization of the aquifer and how it works. And so now we'll be drilling an actual injection well, similar to what we do, what we have up at Mingus. Now, the Mingus wastewater treatment plant injection well that we already have in play right now, ultimately is going to cost us, with all the testing, the permits, the engineering, the plumbing, it's going to be close to around $400,000, $450,000. And all that money is coming out of our CAP trust fund monies. When we purchased the Cottonwood waterworks system, they had a CAP trust fund that was associated with that. And where that came from is when the CAP was divvying up allocations, Cottonwood Waterworks actually received an allocation of Central Arizona Project water. But with the idea that they would be able to do an exchange for Verde water somewhere down the road with, say, SRP or somebody else. Well, there was a biological opinion that prevented them from ever doing an exchange with river water for groundwater, and as a result of that, it became unusable. And so ultimately the city of Scottsdale purchased that CAP allocation that the Cottonwood Waterworks had. And those monies went into a trust fund to help develop new supplies of water. And so that's what we've been using for the wastewater, or the injection well up at Mingus Wastewater Treatment Plant.
So, and you know, you talk about these new resources for water. Why is that important? And I mean, I realize there's probably a long explanation to that, but.
Well, as I said, you know, early on, right now, the sole source of water that's available for potable use, for domestic use, has been groundwater. And, you know, it is a finite resource. I mean, now we're blessed with having a tremendous amount of water in storage here. We also have a tremendous amount of water that's being recharged on an annual basis here, much more than what we actually pump out of the ground. But nevertheless, as I said, you want to make sure that we meet the needs of our customers while also ensuring the integrity of that river, maintaining that river at its optimum level. So the only supply that's available to us right now, without going out and spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars to try and bring a pipeline in from Colorado River, if we could even get an allocation of that water, is our reclaimed water. And the reclaimed water, it's owned by the city. The city owns it. Once it goes in the wastewater treatment plant, it's our water. And by virtue of that fact, we want to make sure we take every advantage of the use of that water. And the only way we can really use that is either through reuse, which we're doing is the best we possibly can, and expanding that when we see things that are beneficial, that make beneficial sense, and then putting it back in the ground what we don't use, recharging it back to the system.
And I mean, the reality is too, is our customers really don't pay for the water. They actually pay for the delivery at this point. But
Exactly right.
as there is in other parts of the state, there's most likely going to be some dispute over who has the rights to the water, not only in the river, but certainly under the river and in the aquifers as well. And so does that play into this?
It does. I mean, we've had the adjudication going on for the Hill River system and source since the mid-'70s, late '70s. And thus far, we have yet to adjudicate a single basin in the state of Arizona, but it doesn't mean that they're making headway in determining, what waters they're even talking about. And, there's always been this gray area between surface water and groundwater. I mean, the adjudication was intended to be solely for surface water supplies. But there is a recognition on the part of virtually everybody that there is a connection between surface and groundwater. And that's a gray area that the courts are trying to decide as we speak right now. And at some time in the future, there may be a decision that says that, our wells are actually pumping, appropriable water or surface water. And in that case, when you start looking at surface water, now you're down to the doctrine of prior appropriation, which means the person who put it to use first and foremost has the senior right to that water. Well, we want to make sure that whatever we do, we're trying to protect ourselves as much as possible. And by putting this water back in the ground, in some small way, we're actually going to be developing these, paper credits, saying, look, we're pumping this much, but we're putting this much back in the ground as well. Mm-hmm. And that kind of ensures our standing, at least we hope so, when the adjudication actually gets into full swing up here and they start looking at these things.
Now, I know in terms of cost efficiency, I know you've looked at kind of the cost per acre. For one of the things we've talked about is let's go out and buy more surface water rights. Mm. We've talked about conservation measures like toilets and those kind of things. But based on what I saw, this is really the most efficient investment in creating that new water supply.
It really is. If you look at it from a cost per acre on a cost per acre basis, it's probably the lowest cost per acre foot that we have available to us. I mean, conservation's only going to get you so far, and if you look at the actual water used by the Cottonwood surface or Cottonwood water system service area, we have a total gallons per capita per daily use somewhere around 85. And when I say total, I mean that's taking total water pumped and dividing it by population, no matter whether that water goes to the hospital or to Walmart or McDonald's or to a private home. And 85 puts us right there in the top 5 to 10 in the state for a municipality, if not in the top 3. And definitely the lowest total gallons per capita per daily use here in the valley. And so you can only conserve so much. And we're kind of on the cusp of conservation at this point in time. And because of the way our system is set up and we're pumping all of our effluent uphill, the less water that we put into the wastewater system, into the homes, means the solid levels go up in our pumping, right, which means it takes more energy to pump the solids up to the wastewater treatment plant because we're pushing it uphill. In some cases, there have been times when we've actually had to put water into our lift station to facilitate transferring it uphill because the solids were so high. So we really, as much as we'd like to, maybe we could squeeze a few more acre feet of conservation out of our current delivery system, it could potentially run into some real problems with our wastewater treatment plant. Now, when Riverfront comes on, maybe we can change some of that and not worry about it so much, but we're right on that cusp. And so when you start looking at a cost per acre foot basis, we're looking at a cost of about $70 per acre foot to put it back into the ground, excluding treatment costs. If you look at, changing out toilets, you start looking at anywhere from, I'm going off the top of my head, I could be wrong on this one, but somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 per acre foot of water savings. And you're only saving, at the most, if we change out every toilet in the city to a 1.25 acre foot or a 1.25 gallon per flush here, and assumed everybody was at a 3 gallon per flush here, the most we could ever save is around 25 to 30 acre feet a year of water a year. And yet we could put 300 acre feet of water into the ground every year by what we're doing now in one well.
Yeah. We're out of time, and we could probably talk hours about water, but we did want to make sure that you had the facts and that you understood what was going on, because again, we did get several calls, people concerned about what we were doing with the injection wells and some of the claims that were being made. But always, if you hear something that concerns you, don't hesitate to call us. We put the number on the screen there. Call City Hall. I'd be happy to spend time talking to people and giving them the information. We don't have a choice about being transparent. Law requires that we're transparent, and we actually prefer it that way. So don't hesitate to give us a call anytime you have a question. And come and join us again on Inside Cottonwood.